So I've made some progress on this RZ1000. It's a 1000cc two-stroke, four-cylinder, based on YZ250 cylinders and crankshafts. Here's the layout of the thing so far. Now I don't have the gearbox of any kind or clutch or anything drawn. I'm waiting to get hold of a R1 clutch and gearbox, etc., which I think is probably pretty well suited for this. So ignore the fact that there's no real structure around these crankcases yet. Basically you draw the core of the thing as a solid model and then add the other parts to that, and then add all the stiffening and stuff and bolt holes and stuff, so don't worry about that yet. So the crankshafts joined together here in the middle. Now this spline is a 13-tooth spline. Unfortunately, it looks like Yamaha have not sequenced, or should I say, lined the spline up with the main crank pin in any way. It's randomly cut on there, so that means that when I join two cranks together in the middle, the degrees will be off on the left and the right cylinder in each bank. So what I've done is, this is a splined drive hub here with 9 bolts in it, so 13 splines and 9 bolts will give me a pretty fine vernier adjustment, and just moving the thing around one hole and trying it again, so until you get the cranks lined up with each other in 90 degree or 180 degree, whatever firing order you want. There's a 30 minus 1 tooth trigger wheel for the crank trigger, so that will trigger the mega squirt fuel injection. But what you might be noticing on this thing so far is that this center crankcase here, so this has to be open here and have structure around it, but what I'll do is I'm driving this off the crank trigger off the front, and I'll drive the alternator off the back. So basically I think I'll tooth belt drive the alternator and not drive it off the gearbox. Depending, I'll look at the R1 box, see if it sort of suits itself to that better. But what you might be seeing here is that this is a modular engine, so because it's vertically split, because you have a vertical split line here between these crankcases, this engine could be more cylinders than this. So this could be a V6 or a V8 just by adding another one of these center crankcases and then another one of these right-hand crankcases to the outside of that and go on. So this could be a 1500cc V6 or a 2-liter V8. What the hell you do with that, I don't know, but the interest's there. So amongst the design, I will make the left-hand crankcase, this one here, with the gearbox attachment to it, and I'll make it so that this center crankcase section is really not part of the box, so that the gearbox will run off this section back here, and so it could be a modular engine. Whether an R1 gearbox would handle a 2-liter V8, I don't know, but that's another bridge to cross down the road. So these are the reeds here, and these are carbon trumpets, about 42mm ID, so it's pretty healthy. And there'll be, so this is, I haven't drawn it yet because it's a bit early, but so there'll be a carbon air box over this. So instead of having individual runners and individual butterflies, you have to synchronize all those, etc., all that crap. Plus then you get variable resonant changes when the throttle is closed to open. These will all be in a common air box, high vacuum carbon air box. So these trumpets will bond inside that. And I'll feed that, I think, with a 70mm single butterfly, something like what off a Honda 2-liter engine or something like that, because that has a throttle position sensor and a map sensor on it. So a single butterfly makes tuning a whole lot nicer, and it'll probably get rid of a lot of the vicious sort of mid-range band, power band stuff that the YZ250 has now. Remember, this has to be a street rideable engine, so you know. The other one that seems to be is this motor's become reasonably small or narrow compared to what I thought I'd put this in an R1, so it probably lends itself to going into an R6 instead. The R6 seems to be its main drawback for having, you know, over 200 horsepower, and it's a little bit shorter wheelbase than the R1, but it's a more commonly available bike. It seems to be most of everything that the R1 has, but in a little bit more compact package because it's shorter, so it could be quite an exciting ride, I think. I'll look at a couple other drawings here. So the YZ250 crank has stuffer plates inside here, and it has these 6mm threads to screw the plastic stuffer plates inside. I haven't drawn them in here, but what it does is that these threads extend all the way through the flywheel. So I've got to be able to oil this engine. I want an oil injection, not premix, of course, because, you know, why would you do that? And so I'm working on a system not unlike what the older triple Kawasaki's used to use, the H2s and the H1s, where they had an oil receiver on the side of the crank. They pumped the oil into the main bearings, and then that centrifuged its way out into the big end pin, and then went out and oiled the big end. It was a very good system, it really was. So these little receivers will bolt to these threads. Here's the receiver here, if you can imagine that. That'll go in the end of that crank pin and screw onto those sides. This is like 20 thousandths thick, maybe titanium, maybe steel, I don't know, I'll have to figure that out yet. And then this little receiver cup here, in here, that little receiver cup will basically scoop the oil that's slung out from the main bearings into grooves and pick the oil up and basically pressure feed it to the big end pins. So that's a fairly nice oiling system, I think. And a street bike two-stroke has to have a good oiling system to live long. You know, who can rebuild their four-cylinder two-stroke every couple of thousand miles? It's ridiculous. So that goes on the crank. Here's a little oil pump. Basically, this is, well, it's hard to see in the dark here, but this is a stepper motor off a 3D printer. This here. So this is a multi-segment pump. Oil feeds in through the center here. The cover's on it here, but it's transparent. And then this is just a stepper motor driving an 8 segment, so there's 3 there now, the main base, and there'd be 7 more of these stages in here, with these little about 440 thousandth diameter gears. So this is just a little gear pump, an 8-stage gear pump, O-ring seals around it. And so each one of these will get fed from an oil tank, and these all each one individually feed into each main bearing in the crankcases. So, and I can control that stepper motor through the micro squirt, or mega squirt actually in this case. It has a stepper driver on board, so I can tune the oil output from probably about 100 to 1 at idle down to about 20 to 1 at wide open throttle, which is about what an H2 750 Kawasaki used to have. So that's a bit of an update on that. That's a fairly simple pump. That'd just be part of the system, you know. So anyway, I'm getting there. I just need to get hold of some gears and stuff next to start working on the gearbox part of this, but it's coming along. Quite an exciting project, I think. The thing would sit in the bike with the lower cylinders horizontal and these back at an inclined angle, somewhat like that. So this gets the top expansion chambers out over the top of the gearbox nicely, and the bottom ones will turn and go in the bottom of the fairing here. So these basically spark plugs will stick out below the radiator of the R6. So anyway, that's it where I'm at to this point. So I'll get some more parts and pieces, some more ideas, and I'll keep going on it. Feel free to leave in comments if you think there's an idea you could have for a V6 or a V8. I don't know what the hell you'd do with that, but either or. This is a pretty good little bike engine as it is, I think, so it should be quite exciting. Anyway, thanks a lot.